It was a Tuesday. One of those Tuesdays that doesn't ask for permission to change everything. The sky was dense, layered with clouds like secrets no one dared to speak. The kind of day that carries the weight of things unsaid. And somewhere on the outskirts of Baltimore, in a laundromat that had seen too many lives pass through in silence, a man stood staring at the dryer as if time itself might tumble out of it. His name was Elijah Carter. 42 years old, quiet jawline, eyes that seemed to carry more past than present. He wasn't a man who spoke much, but when he did, it was never about himself. People said he was kind, hard-working, a good listener. But no one ever said healing. No one ever said whole. Because how could you be whole when your story had been severed 2 decades ago by a single event you never talk about, but which rewrites every conversation you have? Elijah had been 12 when his mother left. Or at least, that's how the official story went. The kind people told him to help him sleep at night. She couldn't handle it. She had problems. She thought you'd be better off without her. But even at 12, Elijah could hear the sharp edge behind those soft excuses. And that edge had stayed with him, carved into his ribs like a blade too old to remove. So when the dryer buzzed and he reached in to grab his clothes, he had no idea that the next 90 minutes would drag him back into a past he had spent 20 years trying not to remember. The laundromat door creaked open behind him. A sound, ordinary by all measures, but it struck something strange in him, a vibration under the surface, like when you sense someone staring before they speak. And there she was. Wearing a pale green cardigan that looked borrowed from another decade, a woman stepped inside. She wasn't remarkable at first glance. Tired eyes, hands that trembled slightly when she reached for her wallet, posture that folded inward like she had forgotten how to take up space. But there was something in the way she looked around, not just scanning the room but searching it, like each face held a question she was terrified to ask. Elijah didn't notice her at first. Not really. Just another stranger in a city full of them. Until her eyes landed on him, and didn't move. There was no flicker of recognition in his. Just polite discomfort, the kind you give someone when you're not sure if they're about to ask you for change or directions. But in hers, something collapsed. A hand flew to her mouth. The sound she made wasn't a gasp. It was quieter than that. More like a memory breaking through the ice. "Elijah," she said. He didn't respond. "Elijah," she said again, and this time it wasn't a question. It was a prayer. Or a wound. Or maybe both. He looked at her. Really looked. And something in his body betrayed him, a flicker, a tension in his jaw. Like a puzzle piece snapping into place you didn't know you were still holding. But it couldn't be. It couldn't be. "You have the wrong person," he said, voice flat, distant. He turned back to his dryer. Folded a shirt that didn't matter. Tried to disappear into the fabric. "I'm your mother," she whispered. And there it was. No thunderclap. No cinematic flashback. Just silence that stretched too long, too wide, and too sharp. She moved closer. Carefully. Like every step was weighted with years she could never take back. "I know I don't have the right," she said. "I know what I left behind. I know I don't get to ask for anything. But I just needed to see you. Just once." He didn't look at her. Not yet. Because part of him wanted to scream. Another part wanted to run. But the part he hated most wanted to believe her. And that part was winning. In that cramped laundromat that smelled of detergent and heartbreak, Elijah Carter stood face to face with a ghost that refused to stay dead. And suddenly, he wasn't 42 anymore. He was 12. And she was leaving again. Just like the first time. Except now, she had come back. But why now? Why after 20 years? And why here? He finally turned to her, the weight of 2 decades pressing down on every inch of his spine. "If you came here to explain," he said, voice like splinters, "don't bother. There's no story you can tell that erases what you did." "I didn't come to explain," she said softly. I came because someone else is looking for you. His blood turned cold. What? It's not just me, she said. There's someone else. Someone who needs to know who you are. And just like that, the floor shifted beneath him. Not because she had returned, but because now, this wasn't about her. It was about someone else. A child. A truth. A second life, built on the rubble of the first. In that moment, Elijah knew one thing for certain. This was not the end of a story. It was the beginning of a reckoning. He didn't speak. For what felt like hours, Elijah just stood there, his hands clenched around a damp towel that no longer mattered, his breath caught somewhere between disbelief and a scream he refused to release. Outside, the rain had started, soft, almost reluctant, tapping against the laundromat's cracked window like it, too, was trying to remember something it had forgotten. "You need to leave," he finally muttered, his voice scraping the bottom of his throat like rusted metal. Now. But she didn't move. Her name was Lorraine. He remembered that name only because it had lived in the quietest corners of him, in the places he buried when teachers asked about his family, when girlfriends wondered why he never talked about his past, when he'd stare into bathroom mirrors and whisper her name just to see if it still hurt. It always did. And now she was here, standing in front of him like a mistake that refused to stay buried, wearing the kind of sorrow that doesn't beg for forgiveness, only recognition. "Elijah, please. I know I don't deserve your time, I know I don't. But I need you to know something before it's too late." He laughed. Not a happy laugh. Not even a bitter one. Just a dry, hollow sound that seemed to come from the shell of the boy he used to be. "Too late," he echoed. "Lorraine, you're 20 years late." Her eyes flickered, and for the first time, he saw it, the damage. Not the kind people talk about. The kind that hides in the way someone holds their breath between sentences, or how their hands tremble when they're not holding anything. She took a step closer, and for a moment, the air changed. "I never stopped thinking about you," she said. "Every day, every single day. I imagined what your face would look like now. I used to stand outside schools just to see boys your age, wondering which one looked like you. Wondering if you'd hate me." "I don't wonder," he said coldly. "I do." That hurt her. You could see it. But she didn't cry. Lorraine wasn't the type who cried anymore. That part of her had died years ago, probably the same day she left with nothing but a torn jacket and a duffel bag full of chaos. "I was 17 when I had you," she said suddenly. "And I was scared. Your father was. He was not a good man. You don't remember, but he—" "Stop," Elijah snapped. "Don't rewrite history just because you're feeling brave now." "I'm not rewriting anything," she said quietly. "I'm finally telling the truth." He hated how calm she was. Hated how she had shown up out of nowhere with words that carried weight but no clarity, like letters from a stranger pretending to be family. "I didn't come back to ask for anything from you," she continued. "I came to give you something. Or at least, to let you decide if you want it." Elijah narrowed his eyes. "I don't want anything from you." She reached into her pocket, pulling out a folded photo. Worn edges. Faded ink. She hesitated before holding it out. He took it reluctantly. And when he saw it, the world tilted. It was a boy. Couldn't have been older than 6. Wide brown eyes. Curly hair. A smile that felt familiar. Too familiar. "He's yours," she said. His breath caught. "That's impossible." Lorraine shook her head. "It's not what you think. He's not your son. He's your brother." Elijah's mouth went dry. The photo slipped from his hand and fluttered to the floor like a piece of the past shattering into the present. "I had him years after I left," she said. "Different father. Different life. I tried to do better. But he's sick, Elijah. Really sick. And I don't have anyone else." The words dropped like lead. He stared at her, jaw clenched, heart racing with a kind of rage he didn't know how to name. Because this was the moment that changed everything, the moment where anger and obligation collided, where he wasn't just a son abandoned, but now, suddenly, a brother summoned. "You think you can just show up after 2 decades," he said slowly, voice breaking under the weight, "and hand me a broken life like it's a gift? I didn't come to force anything. I came because he asks about you. Even though he's never met you. He asks what it means to have a brother." And I couldn't lie anymore. Elijah wanted to scream, to throw something, to run out into the rain and keep walking until the pain gave up. But he didn't. He picked up the photo. And for a moment, the silence between them shifted, not softened, but changed. Like a thread had been tied, fragile and trembling, but real. Outside, the rain got heavier. Inside, Elijah Carter stood at the edge of a truth he didn't ask for. And for the first time in 20 years, he realized, this wasn't just about her leaving. It was about who he might become, if he chose to stay. That night, Elijah didn't go home. He wandered. Down cracked sidewalks and empty intersections, under flickering streetlights that buzzed like the back of his skull. The city blurred around him, not in motion, but in meaning. Every corner felt like a memory he didn't own. Every face reminded him of something he had once tried to forget. He held the photo tight, tucked inside his jacket pocket, as if letting go of it might let go of something else too. A brother. The word didn't sit right in his mouth. It felt like a trick. Like some emotional bait Lorraine had dangled in front of him, knowing exactly which part of his soul still wanted to be chosen. But that kid's eyes. There was something in them Elijah couldn't ignore. A familiarity that didn't make sense but refused to be dismissed. He ended up at his old high school. Not on purpose. His feet had taken him there, drawn by muscle memory and buried ache. The building was closed, of course, its windows dark and reflective, like the past, looking back at him. He sat on the front steps. And for the first time in years, he let himself remember. The shouting. The breaking glass. The nights spent curled on the floor with his hands over his ears, hoping it would all stop. The silence after she left. More violent than the noise. He had been 12 when Lorraine disappeared. One morning she just wasn't there. No note. No warning. No goodbye. Just an empty closet and a social worker asking questions he didn't know how to answer. They said she was unstable. That she had a history. That Elijah would be safer in the system. And maybe, back then, he believed them. But sitting there now, with rain drying on his shoulders and an unfamiliar name tugging at the edge of his mind, he wasn't sure what to believe anymore. She said the boy's name was Noah. And he was dying. A genetic condition. Rare. Complicated. Not immediately fatal. But without the right treatment, expensive treatment, his chances weren't good. There was a list of things he needed. And Lorraine had no one left to help. Except Elijah. Not for money. Not even for time. But for a DNA match. He needs a bone marrow transplant, she had said. And you're his only real chance. He hadn't responded. Not then. He had just stared at her like she was telling someone else's story. Like her words couldn't possibly apply to the life he had spent 2 decades building without her. But now, they were circling him. Wrapping around his ribs. Squeezing tighter with every breath. You're his only real chance. And that phrase had weight. Because Elijah Carter had spent most of his adult life trying not to be needed by anyone. Need made you vulnerable. Need meant risk. Need meant getting left again. But now, someone needed him. A boy. A brother. A child who hadn't asked for any of this, just like Elijah hadn't. What kind of man would walk away from that? What kind of man would stay? He stayed on those steps until the sky began to turn, that strange bruised gray that lives between night and morning. And in that half-light, he pulled out the photo again. Noah's smile was crooked. Like his. That was the moment something cracked. Not shattered. Not broke. Just cracked. And through that fracture, a question slipped in. What if this wasn't about her anymore? What if this was about him? About becoming someone different from the story he had inherited? He stood up, the photo still in his hand. And without thinking, he took out his phone and dialed the number Lorraine had left. His fingers trembled. Not from cold, but from something older, something like resistance collapsing in slow motion. She answered on the second ring. "Hello. It's me," he said. Silence. Then, "Elijah. I'll do the test." A sharp inhale on the other end. Then a pause. Then something breaking, not in her voice, but in her soul. "Thank you," she whispered. "You have no idea what that means." "I'm not doing it for you," he said. "Let's get that straight right now." "I know," she said. And somehow, her voice sounded smaller than he remembered. Not weaker, just more honest. "I want to meet him," Elijah said. "No doctors. No hospitals. Just meet him. Before anything else." Another pause. Longer this time. "You sure?" "No," he admitted. "But I need to." She gave him an address. A small apartment in East Baltimore. Said they'd be home in the morning. That Noah was always up by 6. That he liked peanut butter on everything and thought dinosaurs still lived in the ocean. Elijah hung up without saying goodbye. He didn't sleep that night. Didn't eat. Didn't try to explain to himself what he was doing. Because some decisions aren't made in words. They're made in grief. In silence. In the long spaces between one breath and the next. He was on her doorstep by 6:05 the next morning. The sun had just begun to rise, bleeding orange across the wet sidewalk. And when the door opened, the boy was standing there. Noah. Wearing a faded hoodie 2 sizes too big and holding a plastic velociraptor in one hand. His curls were messy. His smile unsure. But those eyes. They were his mother's. And Elijah's. "Are you the guy?" Noah asked. "What guy?" Elijah said. "The one Mom said was gonna come meet me. She didn't say your name." Elijah stared at him. Then crouched down. And for the first time, let the truth pass through his lips without resistance. "I'm your brother." Noah blinked. Then smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't know how to carry pain yet. "That's cool," he said. "Wanna see my dinosaur collection?" And just like that, something old inside Elijah exhaled for the first time in years. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe. Hope. The apartment smelled faintly of peanut butter and something warm. Cinnamon, maybe. It was the kind of scent that belonged to early mornings, cartoons playing softly in the background, and tiny footsteps running across worn-out carpets. Elijah stepped inside, and the air shifted. Not physically, but emotionally. Like he'd crossed some invisible threshold between the man he'd been for 20 years, and the version of himself he didn't know yet. Noah stood there, barefoot, holding a plastic velociraptor in one hand and blinking up at him like this was the most normal moment in the world. "You're tall," he said. Elijah gave a tight smile. "So I've been told." Noah didn't laugh. Just nodded solemnly, like he was taking notes. From behind them, Lorraine cleared her throat. "Coffee's ready, if you want. Or tea. I know it's early." He didn't answer her. Not yet. His eyes stayed locked on the boy, this small, delicate life wrapped in oversized pajamas and curiosity. It was surreal, familiar and foreign at once. Elijah had never imagined himself as a brother. Not even once. And now here it was, unfolding in real time, with no script and no way to turn around. "You wanna see my room?" Noah asked, already walking ahead. "I have my dinosaurs there. Not the baby ones, the good ones." Elijah followed. Not because he knew how, but because something in him refused to say no. Noah's room was small but alive. Posters of volcanoes and prehistoric landscapes clung to the walls. There were drawings taped to the dresser, colorful, chaotic depictions of creatures with claws and sharp teeth, many labeled with bold, misspelled names. This one's Rexy. He's in charge. Noah pointed to a plastic T-Rex missing an eye. But he's old now. So sometimes, the raptor takes over. They argue, though. A lot. Elijah raised an eyebrow. They argue. Yeah, Noah said seriously. Like Mom and the toaster. That caught Elijah off guard. He laughed, despite himself. Just a breath of sound, but real. Noah looked at him again. Do you like dinosaurs? I never had any, Elijah admitted. When I was a kid, toys weren't really a thing. Why not? He hesitated. Because there was no easy answer to that question. And because some truths were too heavy for 6-year-old shoulders. I just moved around a lot, he said eventually. And when you move that much, things don't stay with you. Noah seemed to consider that. Then nodded, as if he understood more than he should. That's okay. You can play with mine if you want. Elijah sat down slowly on the edge of the bed. He felt awkward. Out of place. Like a stranger in a life that might have been his, if things had gone differently. Do you know why I'm here? He asked. Noah shrugged. Mom said you were family. And that sometimes family comes back when it's important. That sentence hung in the air like dust in sunlight. Soft. Innocent. Devastating. Elijah didn't know what to say to that. He looked around the room again, trying to find something stable to hold on to. A detail, a moment, anything. His eyes landed on a small frame near the window. A photo. Faded but clear. Lorraine holding Noah in her lap. They both looked exhausted. But they were smiling. He hadn't seen her smile in 20 years. I have to do some tests, Elijah said, not looking at the boy. For your health. That's why I'm here. To see if I can help. Noah picked up the T-Rex and made it roar, soft and low. Like a superhero? Elijah shook his head. Not really. Well, Noah said. You look like one. And just like that, Elijah felt something twist inside his chest. He got up, walked to the window, and stared out. The street was quiet. Sunlight slowly creeping between buildings. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked. A delivery truck rumbled past. Does it hurt? Noah asked behind him. What? The tests. Elijah turned around. Noah's eyes were wide, but not scared. Just honest. A little, he said. But it's okay. I've had worse. Noah nodded again, satisfied. Okay. If you do it, I'll do it too. I don't like needles, but it's okay if it helps. And that was the moment it shifted. Not with drama, not with a breakdown, but with the still, unwavering resilience of a child who had no idea how much power his quiet courage held. Elijah walked over and knelt down to Noah's level. I don't know what this will look like, he said. I don't know if I'm good at this. Good at what? Being a brother. Noah smiled. You're doing okay so far. And for the first time in a very long time, Elijah believed that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late. Not to fix what was broken, but to build something new from what was left. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and fear. Not panic. No one was screaming. But the kind of quiet fear that builds in waiting rooms, in test results sealed in manila envelopes, in the way nurses speak gently when the truth is sharp. Elijah stood in the hallway outside the pediatric unit, hands in his jacket pockets, back pressed to the wall like it could somehow keep him upright. He hadn't wanted to come. Had told Lorraine he'd do the blood work elsewhere, anonymously, without any more interaction than necessary. But then Noah had asked, "Will you come with me?" Just like that. No pressure. No begging. Just a question that slipped under his defenses and stayed there. So he came. He sat with Noah while they drew blood, while he winced and made jokes about dinosaurs needing vaccines too. Elijah didn't say much. He didn't know how to. But he stayed. And maybe, for Noah, that was enough. Now Lorraine sat across from him in the hallway. Not speaking either. Just sitting. Like old ghosts too tired to argue. "You didn't have to come today," she said finally, her voice hoarse. "I know." They sat in silence again. People passed them. Machines beeped in distant rooms. A janitor pushed a cart that squeaked with every turn. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," she said, barely above a whisper. "I'm not sure I'll ever deserve that." Elijah stared at the ceiling. "I used to dream about you dying." Lorraine flinched. But she didn't speak. "I used to imagine you overdosed. Or in a car crash. Or just gone. For good. So I could stop wondering." A long pause. "And then," he continued, "I'd feel guilty. Like I had no right to hate someone who gave me life. But I did hate you. I still do. Sometimes." She nodded slowly. "That's fair." "It's not about fair." "No," she said. "It's about surviving something neither of us knew how to name." Elijah looked at her then. Really looked. And for the first time, she didn't try to look strong. She just looked worn. Human. Someone who had made choices she couldn't undo and had been paying for them every day since. "I was broken back then," she said. "Barely holding myself together. I thought leaving would protect you." He closed his eyes. "That's the thing," he said. "You left to save me. But I didn't get saved. I just got lost somewhere else." She nodded. Swallowed hard. "I'm sorry." It wasn't dramatic. It didn't come with tears or a musical swell in the background. It was quiet. Simple. Sincere. And somehow, more painful than all the silence before it. A nurse appeared at the far end of the hallway. "Ms. Carter." They both stood. The results came back. Elijah's a match. Lorraine gasped. Elijah felt nothing for a full 2 seconds. Then, everything. A match. It was real now. This wasn't just emotional proximity or theoretical ties. This was literal. Genetic. Biological. A shared thread written in marrow. "How soon can we do it?" he asked, his voice low, steady. The nurse glanced at her chart. "Pre-op consultation starts this week. With Noah's condition, we'd like to move quickly." He nodded. "I'll be here." And he meant it. Not just the hospital. Here. Present. Available. Accountable. They walked together toward Noah's room. Lorraine a step behind, as if still afraid she didn't have the right. Elijah pushed open the door. Noah was sitting on the bed, flipping through a book about prehistoric creatures. When he saw them, his face lit up. "Did they say yes?" he asked. Elijah smiled, a real one this time. "Yeah, kid. They said yes." Noah grinned and pointed to a sketch on his blanket. "Good. 'Cause if I get better, I'm gonna be a paleontologist. And you have to be my assistant. You already know how to carry stuff." Lorraine laughed. Soft. Uncertain. Like someone learning how again. Elijah walked over and ruffled the boy's hair. "Deal." And for a moment, the room wasn't a hospital anymore. It wasn't about tests or trauma or years lost in silence. It was about now. About a second chance. Not to rewrite history, but to write something new. Later that night, Elijah stood outside the apartment, leaning against his car, staring up at the building. He hadn't gone back to his own place. Hadn't answered his phone. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, how long the process would take, what kind of pain was waiting for him, or if this strange, fragile connection with his brother would last beyond hospital rooms and awkward dinners. But for the first time in his life, he wasn't running from the unknown. He was walking toward it. And maybe that was what healing looked like. Not a grand gesture. Not a single moment of clarity. But a choice. Over and over again. To show up. To stay. To keep holding on, even when the reasons still hurt. Above him, a light flicked on in Noah's room. And as Elijah looked up and saw the shadow of the boy holding up a plastic dinosaur against the glass, like a signal, a symbol, a quiet invitation, he finally let himself believe that it wasn't too late to become someone new. Someone better. Not despite the past, but because of it. If you liked this story, subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.